This truck is on a mission. It will cover many kilometers and cross several borders to celebrate the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. The 6-month celebration tour is sponsored by the German Protestant Church and will stop in nearly 70 European towns and cities. This is the western German city of Worms. Compared to this massive Romanesque cathedral, the tour truck no longer looks so big. Switzerland will celebrate their version of the Reformation in 2019. How will the Swiss feel about marking the occasion 2 years early? The tour also includes a stop in the Latvian capital Riga, where a major dispute regarding the role of women in the church continues in the Protestant community. The toughest part of the tour may be in the largely secular German capital, Berlin. Will the mission be able to interest average Berliners in the history of the Reformation? In early December, the truck arrives in Worms.
Go left, then right, then you'll see a big archway that we can't fit through.
The city's historic Old Town district is not designed to handle 17-meter-long, 30-ton trucks, but that's where the crew needs to go. The Reformation truck has been on the road for a while now. The volunteers usually spend the night in hostels along the way. "25-year-old Johannes Göring is the tour manager. He gets to stay in hotels. But that's probably because he has to work long after the rest of the crew have called it a day.
I accepted the position because I wanted to be part of the Reformation anniversary celebration from the very start. It's an important milestone, and this is a huge project. Not just the tour, but all the other parts of it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, and I wanted to be involved.
The next morning, the cathedral casts a lengthy shadow over the truck. Church officials have organized a small welcoming ceremony, complete with mulled wine and a concert. The truck attracts a diverse crowd, including a local pastor, Jeffrey Myers. He's an American from the state of Kansas. Myers says that the Reformation is about more than just Luther and Germany.
We're living in a time of change. You can sense that. It's like it was 500 years ago. We're on the threshold of a new Reformation. We're going through some labor pains, and not only here in the West. The Reformation can serve as a reference to help us deal with these massive changes and the fear and anxiety that come with change.
And that's part of the truck's purpose. It will record people's thoughts about the Reformation and collect their personal stories about it. There are multimedia exhibitions aimed at getting people to reflect on the significance of the Reformation, a movement that changed the world. Johannes Göring says the tour is also intended to help people rediscover their faith. It looks like he's got this couple thinking.
Martin Luther got people to change the way they think, and that's still important today.
He did more than that. He got people to think for themselves. He gave people confidence so that they could stand up to the authorities and form their own opinions. Luther said, "Here I stand, I cannot do otherwise."
Luther was said to have made that now famous statement at the Reichstag in Worms, about 100 meters from here. This plaque marks the spot where Luther is reported to have spoken. Johannes describes himself as a down-to-earth Protestant, so he takes a pragmatic approach to standing on this historic spot.
It would be wrong for me to say that it's a religious experience for me to stand here where Luther did. I don't think that you can tie the concepts of church and faith to one person. You've got to figure it out for yourself.
In the cathedral, there's a special midday ecumenical prayer service to mark the truck's arrival. The cathedral dates back to the 12th century, and even though it's a place of worship for Catholics, Luther is also present here in this stained glass window. Cathedral Provost Tobias Schäfer believes that if Luther were alive today, he would take an ecumenical approach to religion.
I don't think that Luther intended to divide the church. He intended to reform it and to return the church to the original message of Christ and divine grace. So I think that he would have been pleased and happy if that had happened.
Regional Protestant officials are satisfied with the ecumenical service.
It certainly didn't hurt that the weather was good. Setting up so close to the cathedral, the ecumenical service, it all went together nicely.
The crew have to pack everything up after every stop and then unload it again at a new site a few days later. It's hard work. The Reformation Tour was well received in Worms because of its association with Luther. The next stop will be harder to sell. It's now 4 weeks later. We're in the Swiss capital, Bern. The truck is welcomed with a small ceremony. It's early January and it's pretty cold here. At City Hall, there's a reception for the volunteers. Johannes enjoys having a little time to relax before the real work begins tomorrow.
I think it's great that they've welcomed us like this. It's also a chance to talk to a few people before we get out tomorrow to gather people's personal stories about the Reformation.
The Swiss did indeed experience their own version of the Reformation. Here it developed completely on its own and had nothing to do with Luther. The Swiss are patriotic. They have a strong sense of national pride. Few identify with Luther and the events that took place in 1517. Their version of the Reformation took place 2 years later. The people of Bern celebrate Niklaus Manuel as the father of the Reformation, not Huldrych Zwingli or John Calvin, and certainly not Luther. In Bern, the Reformation was led by citizens, and Manuel played a prominent role. He was a painter and dramatist, and often used stage plays to advance the cause of the Reformation. Ich war tot. And now the Reformation Tour has arrived in Bern. The truck is parked on the square in front of the cathedral, 2 years prior to the Swiss celebrations. Pastor Jürgen Schilling is an official representative of Germany's Protestant Church and one of the people who came up with the idea for the tour. He says it's fine for both the Swiss and the Germans to hold their own celebrations.
We chose a symbolic date, the day that Luther published his 95 Theses, October the 31st, 1517. Everyone agreed with that decision, even the Swiss. They'll hold their celebration in 2019.
Andreas Zeller is not exactly pleased about this German tour. He's president of Bern's Synod Council. Still, Zeller says there's no room for division in today's globalized world. There's lots of religious competition out there.
For example, we have the Catholic Church and the Una Sancta movement. So we think it's important for us Protestants to think about where we come from and to look for things that will bring us together, not divide us.
Packages arrive, but no one seems to know where they go. Still, they work out the problem together.
A practical solution.
In gratitude, Andreas Zeller shows his German guest one of the more unusual aspects of the cathedral's design. The altar and the pulpit are at opposite ends of the church, but people can follow the pastor's sermon no matter where they're sitting. All they have to do is flip the seat. Jürgen and Andreas are getting along just fine. The task of gathering personal stories about the Reformation, on the other hand, is not going so smoothly. Not many people are willing to talk about it. But Christoph Knoch is, and the team uses a smartphone to record his comments.
I told them about how in the 4th grade I got into a fight with a classmate. It was over the Lord's Prayer. He was Catholic and I was Protestant.
The clip is edited right away and posted online. Now Christoph's story about his schoolyard fight over the Our Father has become part of the tour presentation. In early March, the Reformation Road Tour pulled into the Latvian capital, Riga. Riga has been awarded the honorary title of European City of the Reformation, so it's only natural that the tour would stop here. It's Saturday. In spite of posters around town announcing the truck's arrival and inviting people to come to a concert, hardly anyone shows up. Poor attendance allows the rest of the program to be held inside the heated truck. This is Bishop Kirsten Fers of Hamburg. She's talking to the Lutheran Archbishop of Riga, Johannes Göring. There's some tension between the two. Bishop Fers is upset about the Archbishop's ban on clergy women. Göring says the decision is based on passages in the Bible and on apostolic tradition. Fers finds that offensive.
When I first heard about it, I was really indignant, as were a lot of others. And then I started thinking about the grounds that he cited for this decision. It's dreadfully biblical and fundamentalist. It's a repudiation of women's spiritual potential. Women naturally want to know why the Church refuses to make use of that potential in the religious community and in the study of theology.
The Apostle Paul outlined the roles that men and women would play in the Church and in the community of the faithful. We studied his words very carefully. And that is how we here in Latvia read the Bible and how we interpret the Bible.
Meanwhile, Johannes Göring is in the truck preparing for the tour's next stop. They travel to a new city every few days. Johannes has to work out the route, apply for local permits, and take care of countless other details. How they are received by the various local communities is not part of his job. That evening, there's an ecumenical service, a show of unity. Bishop Fairs and Archbishop Vanax walk side by side. The service is broadcast live on Latvian TV. It's a big production. Representatives of all the major faiths are here, but few people bother to attend. Bishop Fairs delivers the sermon, a female cleric in Archbishop Vanax's church. But she's not allowed to take part in the final prayer, men only. During the rehearsal, she assumed that she'd be included in the ceremony. Bishop Fairs still favors dialogue to settle disputes like this, but Archbishop Vanax doesn't seem willing to make any concessions.
We have no problems with our colleagues. If they have a problem with us, they'll have to deal with it themselves.
The tour's visit to Latvia was basically a flop. The people of Riga didn't show much interest, and there seems to be no solution in sight to the dispute between the German Protestant Church and the Latvian Lutheran Church. While the truck continues its journey across Europe, we decide to take a side trip to Wittenberg, the cradle of the Reformation. We meet Jürgen Schilling again. Just as Wittenberg was at the center of the Reformation 500 years ago, it's where the Reformation anniversary celebrations are being coordinated. The main office is located in what used to be a school in the middle of the city.
Hello.
This map shows all the European towns and cities that the tour truck will visit. Jürgen and his colleagues are discussing tour details. It's an enormously complex project, and every stage of the journey has to be worked out in advance. Right now, they're discussing the content of a welcoming speech that's to be made at one of the tour's future stops. The organization's online team is in the room next door. Franziska Wackerbart is in charge of the tour's website. Church officials decided that the tour needed to have a robust web presence to reach as many young people as possible. So far, the site has more than 30,000 visitors. Franziska takes a moment and shows us the story of the two Swiss schoolboys fighting over the Lord's Prayer. It's now online for all to enjoy.
We've had a lot of very positive comments about our website. People enjoy hearing the stories that we post there, and they like to keep track of where the truck is.
There's a real sense of history in Wittenberg. For example, this is the All Saints Church. Luther is said to have nailed a copy of his theses to the front door. Today, Luther's text is preserved here on these bronze doors in the original Latin. Contemporary Austrian artist Yadigar Azizi has created a 360-degree panorama that represents life in Wittenberg in Luther's time. It depicts clerics selling indulgences, and Luther engaged in debate. Here, he's about to post his theses on the church door. But the focus of the Reformation Tour is not on Luther himself. Luther is a polarizing figure, and the tour organizers wanted their exhibits to reach as wide an audience as possible.
Of course, Martin Luther is the key figure for me. I was raised in the Lutheran Church. But nevertheless, I have a problem with people who regard him as a hero and put up statues of him. I don't think he'd have liked that either. And today, we also know that he was not without his dark sides.
But how can you have a Reformation celebration without Martin Luther? Now let's move on to the tour's next stop, Berlin. A majority of Berliners don't belong to any organized religion. Many are only familiar with Luther because they've read about him in history books. This was where the Reformation truck was supposed to park, between St. Mary's Church and the Neptune Fountain in central Berlin. There are lots of pedestrians here. But local government officials decided there wasn't enough public interest in the exhibit and ordered the truck to park next to a nearby construction site.
Things like that happen everywhere we go, and we just try to do our job the best we can. This isn't the best site, but at least people are stopping by.
Come and see our Reformation exhibition. We'll give you a free ticket for a tour of the Church of St. Nicholas. Won't you have a look, sir?
Pastor Bernd Krebs is trying to put a brave face on things. He's in charge of organizing the Reformation celebration in Berlin.
It's a great exhibition and includes a free ticket to St. Nicholas Church.
Pastor Krebs is doing his best to try to get passers-by to stop in.
It's typical of Berlin. Religion doesn't play much of a role in people's lives here. But look at the immigrants who come here from various countries. They bring their religion with them, whether it's Christianity or Islam. So on an international scale, people are interested in religion, but most Berliners just don't care about it. We do. Religion is an important part of our life.
The way the truck is parked also creates a few unexpected problems. A seal or dancing beaver tend not to draw one's mind to the Reformation. And what on earth is that hamster doing here? Pastor Krebs says all this detracts from the significance of the exhibition.
You're invited to come into our exhibition, huh? Some people have already asked me what the bear has to do with Luther. How are we supposed to interpret that? I don't know. I've thought about whether there's some sort of connection. Do Luther and the bear actually have anything in common?
This is about as good an explanation as we're likely to get.
If we were to focus exclusively on Luther, people in other countries would complain. What about Calvin and Zwingli and Hausen in Denmark? The Protestant church officials had to deal with all that when they started planning this project a decade ago. At first, they wanted to include Luther, but the Swiss said there's a little more to the Reformation than just him.
But the Luther souvenirs are popular. They can be had for a small donation.
There's a lot of interest in the Playmobil Luther. It's just flying off the shelves.
Johannes Göring seems a bit disappointed right now. Berlin is his hometown, and his exhibition has been sidelined here. But the show must go on, and the tour will travel to lots of other towns and cities. He tells us what he's learned after several months on the road.
The main thing that I've learned is that the Protestant Church in Europe is extraordinarily diverse. But they all want the same thing. It's all about the Church, faith, and the Reformation, particularly in this anniversary year. For me personally, I've been able to experience Europe not as a political entity, but as a community of people who bring life to this continent. This gives me the courage to hold on to this European ideal and to keep pursuing it. That's not only very important for me personally, it's also important for people of my generation. The one thing I've learned since I've been with the tour is that we have to rediscover Europe together.
The Reformation Anniversary Tour will continue till the end of May. The final stop will be Wittenberg. Then all the material gathered in conjunction with the traveling show will become part of an international exhibition. A collection of stories, large and small, about a movement that changed the course of Christianity.